Let's make Power BI even more powerful by combining it with Power Apps, Power Automate, and the Dataverse. Now we are going to build this sales leadership ranking report over here. What is so special about it is that salespeople in real time can enter a sales transaction here on the right hand side, which is a Power App, put in the number and click on submit. And now that sales transaction gets written back to the source, which is not natively possible with Power BI, but in combination with Power Apps, it is. So let's start building a solution together. Now for me at the beginning, it was quite a big step to start working with tools like Power Apps, Power Automate, and using the Dataverse as a data source. But in this video, you will see it is actually quite straightforward, all right? So let's start building a solution from the beginning all the way till the end. Now, it all starts with the source. Now here you need to carefully consider what your source is going to be, because if we want this real-time updating of the report to happen, well, then we need direct query, not import. Now, what is exactly the difference? If we go for import mode, that means we import the data into our Power BI data model. And that means every time we want to, well, fetch the new data, we need to run a refresh. And if we publish our Power BI workbook to Power BI service, well, there we only have 8 refreshes a day. So then we run into limitations very quickly. So we are not going to use import mode, but we want to use direct query mode, where we directly read from the data source. So without importing the data stays where it is. And every time when we interact with the report, it reads it from the source. So that means when we later on have a sales transaction that we write back to the source, then, well, we can read it straight away from that source and display it in the other visualization. So that is what we need. The question is, what sources support direct query? Well, an Excel workbook doesn't, so that's not an option. So what other alternatives do we have? Well, one good alternative that is relatively easy to get started with is the Dataverse, okay? So let's build the main tables that we need for this report, which is a sales transactions table, that's one, and we need a table that displays or holds the data for all of our employees. Okay, so how do we get to the Dataverse? Well, we go here to a browser, open a new browser tab, and just type in make.powerapps.com. And after you log in, you get here to the welcome screen. Now, what I want to do first is build a new solution for this report. So I'm going to go here to more, and here you see we can choose tables, flows, websites, etc. And one of the options that we have here is a solution. All right, now that solution is going to hold our tables. Okay, now I'm going to build a new solution. Let's give it a name. Now this is going to be our sales leadership tracking solution. So sales leadership is good. Now here you want to choose a different publisher than the default publisher. Why? Because that is also going to be determining the prefixes that you will have for each table. Now, here if I would pick the default one and click here on edit, you see there's this weird prefix. Now, later on we cannot change it, so therefore I would recommend go and set up your own new publisher. All right, so you click on new, display name. Let's go for how to Power BI. So how to Power BI. Then here the name. So how to Power BI, description, well, I leave empty for now, prefix. Now this is important, so over here, let's maybe just go for Power BI. Here you have a sample, Power BI underscore object, click on save. All right, and then it brings you back, and now you can choose the publisher, how to Power BI. Perfect. Okay, so that's set up. Let's create our new solution. Now, in that solution, we're going to have 2 tables, one for the sales transactions and one for the employees. Now, at the moment, it's still empty, so let's click here on new, and then all the way at the bottom, there we have table, and let's go and create a table from scratch. All right, now for the display name, let's go for sales, but I know that I have a few other sales tables in other solutions, so therefore, I'm going to start off with leadership and then sales. Okay. Now, here you also have the plural name. I just leave it as it is. And then here we have a second tab for the primary column. So every table will have a primary column. Now here you could consider renaming it, for example, to sales name, or later on employee name. And here under advanced options, you have a few extra options. So you see the schema name, PBI underscore, you cannot change. It is dependent on the publisher that you chose before. So you have the schema name, sales name, if it's required. Now over here, let's make it optional and let's click on save. Now you see our table is there and it already has quite some columns, even though we didn't set them up ourselves. Now, that is because the Dataverse puts in these extra columns like created by, created on, which could be helpful at some point. However, you cannot get rid of them, all right? So here, to just focus on the ones that we care about, you have here a drop-down, and here you can choose the columns that you want. All right, now I want to first add a few columns. So let's do that first and then select the view that we want to have. All right, so let's click on cancel. I'm going to go over here to the plus sign and you see it creates a new column. Display name is going to be sales amount. All right, description, I just leave empty for now. The data type, that's going to be a number. Now pay attention if you also need decimals. So I chose whole number, but you see we have also different options here like decimal. Now the behavior, that's going to be a simple one. We're just going to write the value to that column. Required, now also here, we could make it required, but I just leave it to optional. Okay, now you could dive even deeper into the options if you open up here. Advanced, the minimum value, maximum value, number of decimal places that are allowed. That's up to you. But for this solution, we don't need to make adjustments there. Now let's click on save. And you'll see if you now click on the drop down, we have sales amount over there. All right, perfect. So that's the first column that I really want to have. Now maybe let's already select here created on, so that we know when the sales transaction happened or when it was entered. And over here we have the sales amount. Now I'm going to click on save. Ta-da, that's it. Now whenever it's gray, you cannot change it. Whenever it's white, you can put in values. Okay, now I need another column though, because at the moment I do not know who put in that sales transaction, right? So I need the employee. So I'm going to click here on the plus icon again. Now this is going to be the sales employee, right? So here I want to have the ID. Now here we have the description, data type. So here the data type is going to be a whole number. Then for the format, well, none is okay. And behavior is again simple, required, optional. Now I'm going to save that one as well. And there it is, straight away it's visible in our view. Perfect. Okay, now these are the two main columns that we are going to use for the sales table. Of course, you could add more later on to make it even more realistic. But for this solution, it's going to be enough. Now, you can already put in some dummy values if you want. So if we, for example, click on that cell for sales employee ID, enter 1, then go here to the sales amount. Let's say this first employee put in a sales record of 2000, press enter. All right, so our first record was created and you see here these values we filled out, the value that you see in these gray columns like created on automatically were generated. So there's automatically a timestamp that's put in. Now, if you want to just see all of the columns in this table, you can go to the schema, click on columns, and here you find the most important properties like the name, but also the data type, whether it is a required column, yes or no. And there are two columns that we need to point out. We have here the sales name column, which is the primary column, and you see it is the main user-friendly text identifier for your record, oftentimes a name or number. And the value in this column will be shown to the user when they need to select from a list of records. So if we go over here to that sales column, click on the three dots, edit. And here, instead of going for a text, we could also go for an auto number, right? So that the number gets automatically generated. So if I leave everything as it is, you see the seed value is 1000. So it starts counting from 1000. Let's click on save. Now I go back to the leadership sales table. Okay, then click here on the drop down and I want to have that primary column, the sales name primary. Okay, now let's try that again. I see it didn't save the sales amount, so I'm going to put in the 2000. All right, and over here, I'm going to have the second sales transaction for the next employee. All right, so 4000. Okay, and you see in the sales name column, we have now 1000. All right, so if I keep on going like this, employee number 3, he or she might have sales of 3000. You see, it just auto increments the sales name column. All right, so there's another column that you want to be aware of. Let's go here to the columns. And here we have one column that is kind of special, and that is leadership sales. which has the data type unique identifier. Now, that identifier is generated by the Dataverse, right? So that is a general unique identifier, GUID, right? So if you click on it, then here I cannot make any changes, all right? So it's always there. Now, if I then go back to our leadership sales table, and let's add that column. So on the drop down, and we have sales leadership or leadership sales, all right? You see, it's that long unique identifying number, okay? Now, that is very helpful if you want to link it with other objects that are within the Dataverse. But if you want to link this table to, well, maybe tables that are outside of the Dataverse where you don't have that unique identifier, well, then you probably want to make use of, well, your own identifier, your own key, okay? Now, here, you see, I have still an empty value there for the sales name, and that didn't record that last value. Now, if we want to, we can edit that table just directly here in the Dataverse. So if I go back, maybe I don't want that first transaction over there. Maybe I don't want this one there at the end, right? I can select them and delete these records. Okay, so that was table number one. Let's go and make the second table. So I'm gonna go back. All right, now let's go to tables and add a new one. So new table. And this one is going to be leadership employees. All right, now also here we have a primary column. Probably makes sense to have here employee name, put in a nice description and click on save. Also here we need to add a few columns, so let's add them one by one, starting off with the sales employee name. Perfect. Okay, now it's also going to be text, save it, and let's go on with the next one. Click on the plus icon. Now for each employee, we're going to have a nice picture. And so we have sales employee image. Okay, let's save it. And the last one, that is going to be for the employee ID column. So here we have sales employee ID. Okay, now you could use that unique identifier that the Dataverse creates for you. However, I just want to have, well, just a sequential number, 1 to 10. We're going to have 10 sales employees, okay? So the data type is going to be a number again, whole number. So we can leave everything else as it is. All right, now let's change the view so that we have only the relevant ones that we want to see. Now here you see they pop up next to one another because all of them start with sales employee. Okay, now then click on save. All right, so now we have our two tables, but the data itself is missing. So we just need to put in some dummy values. Now, over here, we're going to have 10 employees. Now I'm just going to copy over the values that I need in this table. So let me do that quickly. Now, when you fill out the employees in the table, just watch out that if you have a long URL, for example, for the images, it might not fit. And then you have to adjust the properties for that column. So in this case, I had to go to columns. Then here we have our sales employee image column. And if I click on the three dots, then go here to edit. Then here in the advanced options, you see there's a limit on the maximum character count. And by default, it's 100, which might not be enough for the whole URL. And therefore, I had to change it to 1000. Okay, now let's put in also some dummy values in the sales table. So I'm going to go back to tables, leadership sales. Then here, click on edit. And here we can just put in for every salesperson, just a dummy value for the time being. All right, so I filled out some dummy values, and that means we have our two tables, we have some data to work with. Let's now head over to Power BI and connect to our two Dataverse tables. Now to connect to the Dataverse, very simple, we just go to the Home tab. Here you see we have a separate button for the Dataverse. Now let's make sure that you're signed in. And once you do that, connect. All right, now here we have all of the tables that are in our Dataverse environment. Now to find a table very easily, you can just use that prefix, because if I now type in the prefix PBI, then we expect to see our Dataverse tables, because that was the prefix that I chose before. Now, just pay attention that sometimes when you create the tables, it takes a little bit of time to see them over here, and it might be that you have to refresh. So you see, once I do that and I try again, here we have our two tables. Now, I'm going to select both of them. All right, and I want to load them. Now we have the choice. Do we go for import mode or do we go for direct query mode? Now, here it's very important that we go for direct query, because I want to have our new sales transactions be reflected straight away in our report as we put them in with our Power App, all right? So that was one of the main reasons that we went for Dataverse tables, right? Instead of a normal Excel table. Now, let's go for direct query. Let's click on OK, and ta-da, there we have our two tables. But the thing is, we have all of these other columns in there as well. So maybe you want to clean it up a little bit, right? So it's probably a good idea to go to Power Query and just choose the columns, our custom columns that we added to the table, and not those standard columns that the Dataverse adds to each individual table. So here I am in Power Query. I have the leadership sales table selected. I'm going to click on choose columns. All right, so now we have to select the columns that we want. First of all, let's deselect all of them, makes it a little bit easier. Then I want to know when that sales transaction was entered, so created on, and maybe also of these columns that start with PBI, right? So over here we have the sales employee ID, we have the sales amount. Those two are really crucial. The leadership sales ID and sales name, there we have these unique identifying numbers for the sales transactions, which we are not really needing for the solution, at least not as we're going to build it in this video. All right, so for the time being, I'll leave those out. We can always bring them back if we would need them. Okay, now here I probably would also rename the column. So here we have date time, then we have the sales amount, so sales amount. And we have the sales employee ID, which we can just call employee ID. Now the data types look fine, and now we can go to the other table to also there choose the columns that we wanted. All right, so choose columns, and also here we can just deselect first all of them, then type in PBI, and here we want to have the name of the employee, the image, and the ID. All right, and also here we can then clean up the names, so employee name, then we have employee image, and we have the employee ID. Now let's call this table dim employee, and then the other one, that one is going to be our sales table. And let's maybe also put FCT right in front of it. All right, so we have our fact sales table, which has all of the sales transactions, which is then going to be linked to our dim employee table, where we have the descriptive information about the employees. Okay, now we can click here on close and apply and create the relationship between the two tables. Now these tables look much cleaner now, so now we can head over to the data model. The relationship is not there yet, that one we still need to create. We want to have sales employee ID on sales employee ID. So let's drag one on top of the other one. Now here we have the employee table at the top, fact sales at the bottom, and it's going to be later on one-to-many. Now at the moment one-to-one would still work, but we're going to have hopefully many transactions for each salesperson. The filter direction is going to be single, and let's click on OK. Okay, perfect. So the data model also done. Let's now go here to the report. Okay, now first of all, I just want to have a simple table. All right, so insert a table visual. On this table visual, we're going to have from dim employee the sales employee name, and right next to it I want to have the sales amount. Okay, now let me resize a little bit. There you go. All right, so we have the tables in the Dataverse. We have our Power BI file that makes a direct connection to these two tables using direct query, and we have the data model set up as well. Now it's time for the Power Apps part, where we're going to create an input form where every salesperson can put in a new sales transaction, and that should be reflected straight away in that table over there. All right, now Power Apps is a separate visual that you can insert in a Power BI report. So you find it if you go here to insert in the Power Platform group, or you can also go here to the drop down and then here other, there we also find Power Apps for Power BI. Now here, before I would do that, I would actually create a simple table first, right? So we could, for example, copy this one over here and just slide a little bit to the right. And then here on the table, you already put the fields that you probably want to use later in your Power App, okay? So here in the builds panel, let me make this a little bit bigger. Here I'm going to add all of these fields from the employee table and the sales table. So we want to have the sales employee name, but maybe we also need the image, right? If we want to display the picture of each employee. Now let's also put in the ID. Maybe we need that one as well. And also here the other ones, but here for the created on, that one we are not going to use in the Power App, so I leave that out for the time being. Now, couldn't load the visual. Let's see what's up. It tells me employee ID is already there. So I put it in twice, once from the fact table, once from the employee table. One time is enough. So I'm going to take it out All right, perfect. Let's make it a little bit bigger, put it here, and change it now to a Power App. Okay, so I changed the table to a Power App visual, and now we have two choices. We can choose an existing app or we can create a new one. Now here, we are going to create a Power App totally from scratch, all right? So that you see every single step. And that gives you this long URL, and if you click on OK, Power Apps will open in your browser. Okay, so we have an empty canvas where we can build whatever we want. But if you work with Power Apps in combination with Power BI, you always have to double check the integration. So you see over here, we have the Power BI integration. And that means that if it's set up correctly, that we can have our Power App interact with other visuals that are on a report. And that is very important. Now, how do you know if it's working? Well, if I would go here to insert and we're going to create something like a vertical gallery, and a gallery can hold different items. So for example, our employees we could list here. Now here we could also make a connection to the source that we are using in our Power BI report, the Dataverse tables. But I actually want to have the integration, the data that we got from Power BI. So if I click here on gallery, then here you see we have items, and here I want to have Power BI integration, .data, but it's not possible. Now, it used to work like this. However, now for some reason, it doesn't. Don't ask me why, but if we first publish our Power BI report to Power BI service, and then from there create the Power App, you will see we have this Power BI data integration that we really need. Okay, so this is not going to work. This is not going in the right direction. So what we're going to do is we go back to Power BI desktop. We're going to save a file, and then we go to home and publish the report to a workspace. Now that gives us a link. Let's click on it, and that one is going to open up in a browser. All right, now from here we can go to edit. Now that Power App that we were creating before, we're just going to redo these steps, right? So from here, from within Power BI service, we're going to click on create new. Okay, now same thing happens as before. Power Apps is going to open up in a new browser tab, and without me doing anything, well, something already happened. You see over here, we have now already a gallery. I didn't insert it, Power Apps did, because now we have the Power BI integration that I was looking for. You see, when the gallery item is selected here, we have in the formula bar, Power BI integration.data. And that already fills up over here the whole gallery with different images. But now this could be anything that you like. Now, if you click on one of these items, you see sales employee image, could also be sales employee name. Okay, so that is basically already an app. Doesn't do much just yet, right? But just to double check the interaction with other visualizations, it's maybe a good time already to save over here in the bottom, in the top right corner, give it a name. So this is my leadership sales tracking app. Click on save. And also here we can publish it. Once you have done that, you can go back to Power BI service. Now, your report has to load that Power App again. The first time it can take a little bit of time. Now you see it's still loading. Let me just click here on refresh, or what you can also do is add a page and just go back to page number 1, and then it also has to reload. And now, there you go, we have our Power App visual inside of a Power BI report. Now, here, this message is always showing up that you can share it. Now, just click it away. You can also resize this app so that it looks a little bit prettier without the sides. And if I place these two visuals next to one another, there needs to be now interaction. So, meaning if I click here on Catherine, it nicely filters the Power App. And that is that Power BI data integration that I was looking for. So that is working properly. So always double check this first before you put in a lot of effort with all of the other functionalities, right? So that is set up correctly. Now we can go back to Power Apps. And here we can start making other adjustments, because I do not just want to have a list of employees. What I want is, well, ideally the name and picture of the employee that's looking at the report. And then once we have that, then also an input box where we can put in the sales amount and a button that submits it and writes it back into a new row in the Dataverse. Okay, now let's start with the easiest ones, which is the name and the picture. So I'm going to get rid of that gallery. I don't really need a gallery. So often you would go for a gallery or a form, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. Here, I'm just going to have separate elements for each thing that I want to show on this app. All right, so I'm going to have first of all the name. So that's going to be a text label. So here we have a dummy value in the formula bar. Now, of course, I do not want to hard code a name here. It needs to be dynamic. It needs to respond to filters that come from other visuals or that I place on the filter section. Ideally, this is going to display the name of the employee that's looking at the sales report, right? So here we do not start with the equal sign. We can just start typing in the formula. And what I need to look at is that Power BI integration. Now, we need to have data. And you see that Power BI integration .data will return a table. Now, what I want from the table is the employee name column and then only the selected value, because there will be in our Power BI report later on a filter on a certain employee that is looking at the report, right? So how can we do that? With a function that's called first. Okay, so we're going to wrap it inside of a first function. Now that first function, you can always have a look at the description, right? Returns the first row of the source. Now, because of a filter later on, there will only be one row. So first and last will give us the same result. Now, then after it, we put in a dot, and then you'll see all of the column names. Now, I want to have this sales employee name. Okay, now that gives us Catherine Monroe. Now let's display this name a little bit bigger. So over here we have the property section where we can put in a bigger font. So for example, 28. We can put the text alignment in the middle, just like this. And we could actually also have a different background color. So if we go here to screen, you see we have either a background image or fill. Now, by default, the fill is white, but maybe we want to go for a dark theme, right? Now, you see now everything is black. So let's go back here to the label. And then for the label, I want to have a white font. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Here we have the font and I'm going to go for white. Okay, so that is basically the first item on a Power App, which is the label with the name. Okay, now it's time for the second element. So let's go to insert again. Let's look for an image this time. And here I want to have an image of the employee right below it. So it can be a little bit bigger, just like this. Now, where is that image? Now we have the employee image column, right? And also here, if we have a filter on a certain employee, we can basically reuse that same formula as we wrote it before. So to be a little bit quicker, I'm just gonna copy it from here, go to our image item, paste it in there, and instead of sales employee name, I'm going to return the sales employee image. Okay. And now it returns the image for the corresponding employee. Now, let's put it a little bit more down. Also here, you can play around with the formatting, etc., and how big it needs to be. All right. I think this looks good. But to keep everything organized, we can also rename this image object to image employee or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes after you rename it, the image disappears. So just to make sure that it still shows in the Power BI report, let's publish what we currently have and double check if everything is going in the right direction. Now over here, you still see the old version. Now we just need to trigger a refresh, which we can do just by going back and forth between two pages. You can also click on refresh over there in the ribbon. And it can take a few seconds, so it might be that you have to go back and forth a few times. Now, you see, here everything looks fine, right? So if I click on Daryl Meadows, let's see if Daryl pops up. Yep, there he is. Okay, so this is working. However, of course, we still need an input box and a button to submit the sales transaction. Okay, so I'm gonna go back. All right, now let's say you close the browser tab because you had to do something else or the computer crashed, that's no problem. This over here is saved, right? So if I click here on save and then go to the editing mode, click on the Power App and then on the three dots. If I click here on edit, it just brings me back to that Power App page. Of course, make sure that pop-ups don't get blocked. And there we are back again in Power Apps. Now, if you have another instance open of that same Power App in a different browser tab, then it might be that you have to click on override first before you can start making changes. Okay, now here we are back again in Power Apps. I'm gonna have now an input, text input. So over here, let's look for input. And here you see we have text input. I'm going to have it over here in the middle, just like this. I want that text to show more or less in the middle. And over here by default, there should be no text, but there should be a hint text. So enter sales amount. All right, so or sales transaction. Okay, now whatever you like. So that will always show up in a little bit lighter color. And then as soon as you start typing, that will disappear, this hint text. Okay, now then we need an option to submit whatever is in there. And that you can do with a button, right? So let's look for a button. And that button I'm gonna put right below it. Here, this one we can also make maybe a little bit bigger, just like this. And instead of button, we want it to say something else. So here for text, let's say submit. Okay, and that gives us all of the objects that we want to have on our app. Now here on the left-hand side, just make sure that everything is cleaned up. So we have here a button for submit. And then here we have our text input. That is going to be our sales value, right? So let's call this one sales value. And then usually also put them in the order that I want them to be. So sales value, I want to have a little bit lower. So reorder. And then if you say send backward, right, it goes down. So that submit button, I probably want to have over here all the way in the back. And so reorder, send to back. Then it goes all the way down. Then we have the label. That one I want to have all the way up. So reorder, bring to front. Then we have the image, the sales value, and the button. Okay, now that button has a different kind of color than what I'm using in the report later. So I'm just going to change this blue to something else. So here we have the color. Let's go for custom and let's put in a different code. So this purple, all right. And then over here for the border, I don't want the border, just going to put that to 0. And then over here, you probably also want to play around with the other colors, but I think for now, this is good enough. Okay, good. So now let's have a look at the functionality. How can we make sure that if somebody presses that submit button, that the value that we're going to write here, so over here when I write 1,000, if I now click on submit, that it goes back to the data source, that table that we have in the Dataverse. Now let's go to the button and you see for on select, so when somebody presses on the button, nothing happens. It returns false, okay? So that means nothing. So let's change this. And here we need something that writes the value, the sales value back to our sales table and also figures out, okay, for which employee this is, right? So that we can do with a batch function. Now, if you have no experience with Power Apps, then you probably have no clue what that means. However, it will become clear in a second. So we have batch. Also here, we don't need that equal sign. Let me just extend this formula bar a little bit. If you go onto that function and do control space, and then click here on the arrow, you see it applies the updates to the specified row and changes the row in the specified data source, returns the updated row. So you see it's the function that's being used to either update a value or you can also use it to add a row, okay? So we have batch. Now we have to refer to our table, right? Here our table is called sales, but it doesn't pop up. Why doesn't it pop up? Because, well, we have only our Power BI integration. We have not connected this Power App to the Dataverse tables yet. Okay, so therefore, if I type in leadership, employee leadership, sales doesn't pop up as an option. So let's go over here to the data sources for this Power App. And then we can click here on add data. And now here we have to make the connection to our two leadership tables. So we have leadership sales, and then we have another one. So add data. And then here we going to have leadership employees. Okay, so now that we have the connection to these two tables, now we can go back here to the tree view. All right, click on the button, on select is equal to, and let's try this again. I'm going to expand that formula bar and use the batch function. Okay, so batch, bracket open. Look here. We have leadership sales. That is the one that I want to update. Okay. Also here you can just put in line breaks with shift enter. And so leadership sales. Then normally you have here the record. And so you would have here leadership sales again, but here we are going to wrap it in a default function. Now what does the default function do? Returns default values for a data source as a record. And so we will get all of the values, all right? So defaults, and then here we have leadership sales. Okay, so that is then the second argument of the batch function. And then the third argument is the update. Okay, so that is going to be in between curly brackets. So over here, open the curly brackets, maybe Shift Enter to go down. Maybe also, let's close that patch function there at the end already with a round bracket. And then over here, we're going to have the sales amount first. Okay, so let's select this one. It's going to be equal to, well, we could just hard code the value 1000. However, I want the value to be not just always 1000, but the value that's being put in there, right? Now, how can we figure out what is being put in there? Now we can refer to the value that's inside of that input label, text label object, right? So I'm going to get rid of the 1000 and we're going to refer to the sales value, which is the name of that object. So just double check how you call it. And then from that, we want to have the text. Now, it still gives me error. It says data type, text. Okay, so we can wrap this inside of a value function. Convert the text that represents a number to a numeric value. So I'm going to wrap this inside of a value function and see the errors are gone. All right, simple as that. Now, maybe to make it a little bit better, let's go back to that label. And here you see that the format is text. I could also switch this to a number. However, I believe you still need to wrap it inside of that value function. Okay, so let's leave this as it is. And now let's also enter the other things that I want to pass on to our table, right? So over here, let's add another line. And over here, I also want to have the sales employee ID. Now, which is going to be equal to, well, if I type in here employee, let's see if employee ID pops up. It doesn't, right? We need to get it from the Power BI data integration again. So I'm going to refer to Power BI integration, just like we did before, data, and this we can wrap inside of a first function or last, whatever you prefer. It doesn't really matter. Close the brackets and then dot, and then here we have the sales employee ID. Now, don't forget the comma there at the end. And if necessary, wrap it also inside of a value function. So this writes now back the sales employee ID and the sales amount. Now, is there anything else that we need? Well, for now, maybe this is enough. Let's first see if it works before we make further adjustments. So let's click on save if necessary. Then click here on publish. Yep, publish this version. And then we go back to Power BI service, back to the report, and just reload that Power App. And probably you will still see the old version, so you have to wait a little bit, refresh the page, and then after a minute or so, it should be there. So over here, you see we have our new updated app with hopefully the ability to write back to the source. So if I just test this by clicking around, now you see this interaction is still working. Sometimes the image loads, takes a little bit of time. I could, for example, compress the images a bit more so that it goes a little bit quicker. However, the interaction is working properly. Okay, then the moment of truth. I'm going to type in here a value. So let's say for Lucille, which is currently 4,500. There for her, I'm going to type in a sales transaction of 1,000. I'm going to click here on submit. Well, and now nothing happened. However, are we sure that nothing happened? Well, let's go to the Dataverse table and first check if we have now a new sales transaction recorded for Lucille. All right, I'm going to go back to Power Apps. Now, in our leadership sales tracking solution, we have two tables. I'm now interested in leadership sales. And from here, let's go to edit so that we have a better overview of everything that got recorded. And here, all the way at the bottom, you see we have a new sales transaction being recorded. Sales employee ID 9, sales amount 1,000. So how can it be that I do see the sales transaction correctly popping up over here, but not in a Power BI report? Well, that is because our visuals simply didn't get refreshed. All right, simple as that. So if I go back to our Power BI report, and now we click here on refresh, boop, there we have now 5,500, 1,000 more than before for Lucille. All right, okay, so of course you don't want to, well, click on refresh. This needs to happen automatically. So we need to trigger that refresh. So if we go back to Power Apps and then click here on that button, now we can extend this a little bit further. So the patch is just one thing that needs to happen, right? However, I'm going to have a second thing. So let's put in here a semicolon, and right in front of it, I want this Power BI integration to refresh. So I'm going to write Power BI integration.refresh, then a semicolon. And you see it still gives me an error. So name is not valid, refresh is not recognized. Now, this is a function, so you just need bracket open, bracket close right after it. Okay, now that is one thing. And another thing that's a little bit confusing for the end user is that there's no message, right? So let's extend this a little bit further. So over here, again, another semicolon. And then right in between, here I'm going to have notification. And so notify, bracket open. And here we can go for the text success. Then what kind of type? We want to have a success type. And then over here, the timeout. So let's go for 5,000. This is milliseconds. Okay, so, and that should do. So let's save the app again. And let's also click here on publish. Okay, so now it will, of course, take a minute or so, and then we can test it in Power BI service. Okay, now, actually, we can also directly test it from Power Apps, right? So if you would just click there on the play button, so preview app, and here we can just fill out a value and click on submit. Or if you click here on the X, you can also hold the Alt key, and then you see here you can also click on submit. All right, now let's try again to enter a sales amount in our Power App that's integrated in our Power BI report. Okay, so I'm back here in the report in Power BI Service. I'm going to put in a sales amount. Now let's do it now for Dennis. So I'm going to select Dennis, which is currently at 1,500, and I want to bring him to 5,000. So let's say he has a sales transaction of 500. Then I click here on submit. I see now, success pops up. Perfect. Now you can click it away, but it will also time out, go away after 5 seconds. And you see, it gets reflected straight away without me having to click there on refresh visualizations. Perfect. This is how I imagine it to work. Now that data is written to our table in the Dataverse. So if I go to the Dataverse table over here, now it doesn't show straight away, but you need to refresh this one, right? So that you see the new rows that got added after the last time it was on this page. All right, so the core functionality we got working. However, we can enter the sales value for any sales employee. And maybe if this is going to be a real solution, you want to have the salespeople looking at this report to be able to enter only values for themselves. Now, this we can achieve, first of all, by having a measure that figures out who's actually looking at the report, and then a measure that we can use as a filter to place a filter on the Power App visual. And we need to turn off the cross-filter interaction between the two visualizations, which is actually a very quick one. So let's do that one first. Visual interactions, edit interactions, make sure the table is selected, and turn off the cross-filter interaction. All right, and that's it. Now, after you've done that, you can go back to visual interactions, turn it off, and save the file. All right, so we have turned off the interactions. Now we have to add the measures to figure out who is looking at the report and the filter measure. All right, so I can do this in Power BI Service by clicking on Open Data Model, or you can just download the file and do it in the desktop. Okay, now let's click on Open Data Model. Now here I'm gonna go to our dim employee table, click on Add a new measure, and let's zoom in a little bit, and over here we can have user. So user is equal to, and then user principal name. Now user principal name returns the email of the person that is logged into Power BI Service. Now to see this in action, we can go back to our report. Now here, if it doesn't show up, just click on refresh. There it is. And then we can add it to just a card visual, a table visual, whatever you prefer. All right, you see, it returns my email. Perfect. Now, I don't want to have the email, I just want to have first and last name. Now, to get that, let's go back to our model again and adjust it. Now we just have to extract everything that's in front of, for example, the dot or in front of the @ sign, so we can work with left, mid functions, depending on how the email addresses are set up within your organization, okay? Now, let me just copy it over to save a bit of time. Now, over here, this is one way in which you could approach it. So you see we have the email, user principal name, then I extract the left part of the email. Now, over here within my organization, we have a dot to separate the first and last name. All right, and with the search function, you can basically figure out where the dot is what position. Okay, so here we extract from the left-hand side the first characters until the dot. And then from the dot until the @ well, that is the last name. Okay, so over here, that second part, and then we just put it together. Now, let's see if this works. I'm gonna go back to our report, clicking on refresh. All right, so you see now over here we have the first and the last name, and that we can use for the filter measure later. Now, Boss Dohmen, my name, is not in the employee table, so there will be no match, and therefore I just keep this over here. However, I'm going to comment it out, so I select all of the rows, Control, hashtag or /, depending on your keyboard layout, and then over here I'm just going to hard code a username. All right, so let's say that we are Sandra, so Sandra Ross, which is an employee in this table that I've set up. Now, we can play around with that name a bit later, all right, but we pretend to be her. Okay, now I'm gonna go back, click on refresh, and you see over here, I'm pretending to be Sandra. Okay, now, how can we use that? How can we now say, okay, if Sandra is looking at the report, then here the image and the name that should show should be then also for Sandra. Now, for that, we get to the second measure, which is going to be the filter measure. All right, so I'm gonna go back over here to the model and insert a new measure. And this one is going to be my user filter measure. And if the selected value of the employee name is equal to the user, so in our case, it's going to be Sandra, and I want to return 1, otherwise I want to return is 0. Okay, now that measure we can use as a filter measure for the Power App visual that we have here. You see over here we have sales employee name. Now, if I would just click here on, let's say, Daryl, see, Daryl shows, right? And if I click here on Gary, then Gary shows. Okay, now that needs to happen, of course, not manually, but automatic. So therefore, I'm not going to go for basic filtering, but I'm going to choose top N, 1 by value. Now for that, we have our new measure, but it doesn't show up because I forgot to click on refresh. So over here, 1, user filter, boop, click on apply. And ta-da, we have here Sandra showing. Now, let's see if this also works for the other ones. So let's say we are pretending to be Tabitha Hurley. All right, so I'm gonna go back to a model, user. I'm going to pretend to be Tabitha Hurley. Now let's see if I did not make a typo. I hope not. Let's cross our fingers. Let's go back, refresh the visuals, and I did not make a typo. There you go. We are now Tabitha Hurley. Okay, so you see, now if the salesperson goes to this report, they only can enter values for themselves. Okay, that's important. All right, so we have the whole Power App working as we intended to have it. Now, we just have to make everything else also a little bit prettier so that we have really a sales ranking, and that is the Power BI part, right? So let's maybe now save the file and then download it and open it up in Power BI Desktop, where we have sometimes more functionalities, and it's maybe a little bit easier than doing it here in Power BI Service. Okay, so I'm gonna go here to File, download this file. Yep, I want to have a copy and open it up. Okay, so here I have the report in Power BI Desktop, and now we just have to make everything look a little bit prettier so that it's nice to look at, and then we have a good overview also who the first 3 sales employees are, and then we can test it. All right, so I've already created a nice background for this report, which I'm going to import. So I'm gonna go here to formatting for the page, and then canvas background, image, choose the image, and then we put the transparency to 0 and make sure that the image fit is set to fit. All right, so let me zoom out and let me then put over here a Power App on the right-hand side. Over here, we can also resize it. You see, when you resize it, sometimes it's you want it to be a little bit bigger, smaller, doesn't completely work as you intended to look like, but it's responsive. Now, if you want to, you can actually go back to Power Apps, and then here for the app, we can go to Settings, and then Display, and then here you see you can also go for Landscape, but Scale to Fit you could turn off. Now, just to see, like how that would look like in your report. So just know that one more fills the available space, and if it's turned on, it fits the available space, all right? So over here, if I turn it off, click on close, save it, and then publish it again, all right? Go back to Power BI. And after waiting a bit and refreshing visual, it looks like this. You see, a little bit bigger and maybe more in line with everything else on the page. So you have to see what works the best in your report. Okay, so I'm just going to resize a bit so that it nicely fits on the placeholder, just like this. Then here for size and style, we can turn the background off so that we don't have this white line outside of it. There's sometimes a little bit of a line still popping up on the right or the left. If you want to get rid of that, you just have to play around with the height and the width. If you go here to size and style again, and then, for example, make this width a little bit less, I see now it's gone, all right? So I just perfect the positioning from here. All right, now let's take that table and let's drag it over here to the bottom, and let's make it a little bit wider. Now, of course, we want this to be more in line with everything else, so we have to change the formatting. So here we have to go to column headers and make the background color black and then the text color white. And so we have to just do this for all of the different elements. And then also here for the totals, the same thing. So we want to have the text color in white and then the background color in black. And then here for the values, there we want to have the text color also white, the background color black. All right. And then the overall background you find under size and style, background, and then either turn it off or make it black. So over here, I'm gonna make it black. All right, then the border lines and the grid lines. So grid lines I want to turn off, maybe like this. And then we have the border lines are currently blue. Let's just make it purple for now. All right, now the table is there. Let's now also add the ranking. So over here in the builds panel, here we can keep on adding the measures. So new measure, and let's maybe just start with the total sales so that we have a measure for that. So total sales is the sum of the sales amount. And then let's add another one. So new measure, and this is going to be the employee rank. And for that, we can use a rank X function, which iterates over the table. Now that table we can return with all selected. We want to iterate over all of the employees, right? Now that all selected function gets rid of any filter that's a filter context that's coming from the visual, but keeps the outside filters. And then for each employee, we want to return the total sales, iterate over this table, calculate the sales for each employee, and then return the ranking. Okay, now that is the employee rank measure, which we can actually already add here to the table, so that we have a nice little ranking right next to it. And you see something interesting happening, and that is that we have this empty row. So over here, let me sort by the employee rank. Now that empty row is there because here in our modeling view, there this relationship between dim employee and FCD sales, there it doesn't assume referential integrity, right? So here, if you're working with direct query, then and you're sure that you do have referential integrity, meaning we have all of the sales employees in the dim employee table as we have in the FCT sales table, right? Which we do. We can click on this one, so we don't need that blank row, right? Otherwise, it's always empty there at the bottom. So with that one checked, you see it will disappear. All right, so we have our employee ranking, and now I want to show the top 3 over here at the top. Now, for that, again, we need to have some measures. One measure that returns the picture or the picture URL, the image URL for the first person that has the highest sales, and then one for the second one and for the third one. So let's go over here, add another measure. Now, this one is going to be a little bit longer, so we're going to have the first ranked employee, and over here we're going to have a variable that's going to have the rank table. Now, let me show you what I mean. Let's build this table with add columns. Now, at the beginning, we first want to start with a table that has all of the employees, and then we're going to create a column. Let's call this one a rank. Now, the @ sign just indicates that this is a column that only exists within this virtual table that we're creating here. All right, and the rank we can calculate just like we just did before, right? So rank X, and then all selected, and we just repeat exactly the same thing. We iterate over the table, dim employees, and then we have the total sales, all right, and that gets calculated for each employee, and the rank X turns that into a rank. Okay, now we can close that columns function. If you want, you can also indent the whole thing. All right, and now we're going to have a second variable. Now this is going to be returning the actual employee, so the rank 1 employee. And here I want to use a calculate function that's going to return the employee, so the employee name or the employee image. Let's go for the image first. All right. And then here for the second argument, we're going to use a filter function. We're going to filter that rank table from before. All right. Because we want to have only those that have a rank equal to 1. Okay. So rank equal to 1 without that @ sign there at the beginning. Okay, and then we can close the filter function, close the calculate function, and indent this a little bit. Perfect. And then we can return the rank 1 employee. Now that was a long one, and now we can just repeat the whole thing also for rank 2 and 3, just saying, okay, here we're looking at employees. So for this one, I don't want to have the image, but the name would be a little bit better. Okay, good. So I'm just going to do this 2 more times. Okay, so over here we have a 1, that's going to be 2, and then once more for the rank 3 employee. All right, so we have the measures that return the first, the second, and the third employee based on the sales ranking. Okay, now let's test them. To do that, I'm just going to insert a new table visual. Let's put it over here. And to that visual, I'm going to add the 3 measures. Now you see, this looks a little bit off because for the third ranked employee, we have a blank value. How is that possible? Well, if you go over here to the table, we see we have Lucille, that's the first one, all right, that's okay. Then we have Daryl. Daryl is not showing, but Keith is. Now, what's going on is that we have, well, a shared rank 2, right? So if we look here at the employee rank, we have, well, 2 people that have an equal rank, and then it jumps the third one and goes to 4th. All right, now how to deal with that? How can we make sure that we do not have an equal employee ranking? All right, now for that, we have to make a small adjustment to how we rank the employees so that we cannot have the same rank for multiple people. All right, let's go to the measure employee rank. And here we just have to make a small adjustment to the values on which the ranking happens. Now, here I'm going to add, after total sales, I'm going to just return the employee number. Now you might be thinking, why the employee number? Well, it is just a random number that is going to be very small so that we do not have 2 employees with exactly the same ranking. Now, could we make this more sophisticated? Of course we could. We could also make it based on the number of sales that the salespeople have, or we could consider just an alphabetical ranking in case they have exactly the same sales amount. But I don't want to overcomplicate it at this point, so I'm just going to take the employee number. All right. Now, how can we do that? We cannot just refer to the employee ID. However, we need to have something like a max function, and then we're going to look for the employee ID. So this one over here, close the brackets, and then we need to still wrap this inside of a calculate function. So calculate, and that calculate function here forces context transition. When we iterate over the sales employees row by row, we take that sales employee name as a filter, right? So basically it just then returns the employee ID for, well, the employee, all right? Now, I'm going to divide that by a lot, so it doesn't matter. So just to make it a very small number, because it just needs to be a little bit different, all right? And the employee rank nicely updated, and we do not have 2 or more employees with the same rank. It's not possible anymore. Okay, now, why is Keith first? Because, well, he has a higher employee number than Daryl. That's the only reason. All right. So again, we could make it more sophisticated, but for now, this is enough. All right. So we have now a way to break the ties when there are ties. Now we can go back then also to our first ranked employee, right? And here we're going to make that same adjustment, right? So calculate, max, and then employee ID. All right. And then we close the brackets. Now I'm just going to copy this and then also add this for rank 2 employee, and then also for rank 3 employee. And then we solve the problem. We have now Lucille, Keith, and Daryl. All right, so the measures are working. So I can get rid of this visual. We don't need it anymore. That was just for testing. And now we can already use these measures on a card visual. So let's insert the first one. All right, then I'm gonna choose over here, new card visual, this one over here. And then we can go to formatting options. All right, and then over here, I don't want to have the label. So the label I'm going to turn off. Then for the value, I want to have this much smaller. All right, so let's go for 12. Color, let's make it white. All right, and then over here, I want to have it in the middle. Now, where is it? It's not visible anymore because we still have a background. So I'm going to go here to size and style, turn the background off. All right, and then we do the same for the card itself. So I go to cards, background, turn it off, and I also don't want to have the border. And now we can resize it, and if you watch carefully, there you go, here we have our card, and now we just have to nicely align it there on the placeholder. Now I'm just going to copy that 2 more times and do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to put one over here, all right, and then one more over there. And then we just update the measures that were added onto these cards. All right, so we are already displaying the names of the top 3 employees. Now we need to do the same thing for the images of these employees. Now, we could actually create measures with the same pattern and then just return the image, or we can also go over here, create a new measure, and then let's call this one rank 1 employee image, and that is going to be equal to, and first of all, we are going to have the name of the first ranked employee. So over here, I would just write employee, and then we can refer to rank 1 employee. And then here we can return the employee image in another variable. And for that, we can use the calculate function, and we want to have the maximum and then image. Okay. Now this could also be selected value, right? But it doesn't matter, max, min, selected value, all of it would work. And here I want to have the employee name is equal to employee. All right. And then we can indent it and return the employee image. And just like before, we have to do it 2 more times, right? For employee 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we have the measures that return the image URLs for employee 1, 2, and 3. And now we can insert a new card visual. All right. I'm just going to place it over there at the top. Employee image is what I want. I'm going to add it over here. Now, I don't want to show it as a value, so therefore I'm going to go here to formatting and turn the values off. Okay. Now, label we also don't need. We want to make use of the image feature over there. So here we can turn image on. All right. We want to have image URL. Click on that FX button, and then here we can look for the image measures. Now, I'm going to do it for the first employee, and that looks good. We have Lucille showing up there at the top. Okay, now I don't want to have that background again, so I'm gonna go and turn it off. And then for the card, we're gonna do the same. Background off, border off. All right, and then we just have to nicely place it over the placeholder. Now here it's just playing around a bit. Probably easiest if you go to size and style. I have here a width and height of 150, and then, you know, with the positioning, we can just do it pixel by pixel to get it perfectly over the circle. All right, so this gives me the perfect positioning. Nice. All right, now we just have to repeat it again 2 more times. So I'm going to copy paste this one. Here is going to be employee number 2, and then we're going to have employee number 3 over there. All right, so we have them in place. Now we just have to update the measures for the images. So I'm gonna take this one, then go to image, and then here the image URL. It's now going to be the second ranked employee. Okay, and then we go to the third one, do exactly the same. Beautiful, and the images of the employees are now also in. Now, just the last finishing touch, and that is a text box all the way at the top that says that this is our sales leadership. I'm going to place that text box in the middle of that part, sales leadership. All right, and I'm going to put it in the middle, make it a little bit bigger, and then also get rid of the background, and let's make it white. And maybe I like it capitalized, so I'm just going to capitalize it quickly. Sales leadership. All right, so our sales leadership tracking report is almost done. Now, I see that we have Catherine Monroe here, which doesn't make sense. If I look here at the user, it should be Tabitha Hurley. So I'm going to double check the filter. The filter, it's not there anymore. Something, maybe it wasn't saved. So I'm gonna put it back, top N, top 1, and then over here by value. And the value is going to be that user filter. And let's click on apply. And that's it. Okay, now it's time to test the report. And also, still, I want to be informed by, let's say, email when somebody submits a new sales transaction. Okay, so I'm going to save it first. Now, to test it, you don't necessarily have to publish it to Power BI Service. You can do it also from Power BI Desktop. Now, let's see. We have here Tabitha, which is ranked over here as number 7, all right, with sales of 2,000. Now let's say we're going to put 2,000 on top, right? So a new sales transaction comes in. Click here on submit, success. All right, that's good. Okay, now after 5 seconds, that disappears. I'm looking here on the left-hand side and Tabitha is still there. Well, the thing is, if you're in Power BI Desktop, we need to refresh the visualizations. Now to do that over here, we need to go to the Optimize tab. All right, and then here we have refresh visuals. And then after a second or so, you see it gets added and Tabitha Hurley is now employee rank 5. All right, so it is working. Now, of course, in Power BI Service, you don't need to refresh the visuals manually. It happens straight away. All right, so I'm going to publish the report again. So home. And then click on publish and let's follow the link to a Power BI report in the service. And there we are in Power BI Service, and let's say Tabitha keeps on selling more and more and currently is already at number 5. So let's add another sales transaction of, let's say 1,500. Okay. And without clicking here on refresh visuals, you see Tabitha is now on rank number 2 and shows also now here at the top. And let's say she is not done yet and keeps on going and going, has another sales transaction of 1,000 and she made it all the way to the top. Yes. All right. Now, at the beginning, I also told you, we are going to learn about Power Automate, right? Because we do want to be informed not only when we look at this Power BI report, because we cannot just be staring at this report all day, right? We also want to be informed either over Teams or by email. And for that, we can use Power Automate, right? And it's all nicely integrated in Power Apps. So if we go to Power Apps, if you don't have Power Apps open anymore, just take the app, click on the 3 dots, and then go here to edit. Now, there we are. I'm going to click on override. All right. And now here we're going to set up a flow. Now, to create a flow, we can actually do it from Power Apps, right? So here there's a separate section, Power Automate, and we can create a new flow from within Power Apps. That's really, really nice. So let's click on it and that opens over here some templates. Let's see if there's an email template. Yes, there is. We have this one over here. See, there's also one for Teams, but let's go for the easy one. And that is an email. Now over here, you see I don't need to authenticate anymore. There's already a green check mark, so that's good. And we can give it a name. So email, and then we want to have a notification for new sale. Okay, now let's click on next and create the flow. And that's it, we have created a flow already. Now, if you want to do more advanced stuff, you just go here to the flow on the left hand side. You see it pops up there, click on edit. You see the trigger is Power Apps. When we are going to click a button, that's when we want to run that flow. And then the second step is to send an email. Now, over here you can set it up by just clicking on it. All right. Now here we have 2, subject, body. Now you can hard code it, but actually I want it to be set in Power Apps. So you see there's dynamic content. So we have dynamic content like to, subject, and body. All right. So we can actually just leave everything as it is. We just wanted to show how that flow actually looks like. And then we just go back to our tree view and we're going to select our button. All right. And then we want to run that flow when somebody clicks on the button, right? So over here, let's add another part. And to run a flow, we can just refer to the name of the flow, right? So we want to send an email. So if I start typing email, you see it already pops up. We want to have the second one there, email new sale, run, all right? And then well, this is going to run the flow, but we have a few parameters. We have 3 parameters. Now the parameters we don't see from here when we press Control Space. However, we have the to, the subject, and the body, these 3 parts. Now we can just specify them in here. Okay. So I want to have as the to address just my personal email address. Let's not bother anybody else. So Dohmen@datatraining.io. And then we have the subject. That is going to be new sales transaction. And then here for the body there, we can have, for example, the amount. Now, we could hard code it just like this and just see if this works. Now, at the moment we get an error just because I missed the semicolon right after it. Now, always start with easy hard-coded inputs and then, make it variable so that you check every step on the way. All right, so I have all of the parameters filled out. Okay. Now I'm going to save the app. All right, now let's see if we get a notification when we enter a new sales transaction. So I'm going to go over here, back in Power BI service and type in a sales amount. So let's type in 2000, going to click on submit. Success, all right. And the visual nicely updates. So we have also here now 2000 on top. And I got a new email notification. So let's open my Outlook. Ta-da! Here we have our email. We have a sales entry sent from Bas Dohmen to Bas Dohmen, and over here our sales value number. Now, if I go back to Power App and then take the submit button, you see one more change that I made right before I went on with the testing part, and that is instead of 1000, I replace it with sales value.text. Now, what does that refer to again? That is the input box, right? So the input box is called sales value, as you can see over there, and we want to have the text. Now, if you want to convert that to a value, then you can use the value function. That's it. All right, now we can extend that further and also return the employee name and put some nice body tags around it, but it is just an adjustment, further adjustment of what we already have. So our solution is done. All right, so we have our sales leadership tracking report that uses the Dataverse for storing our data. We have a Power App that lets us write back data into the tables that are stored in the Dataverse, and we are using Power Automate to send an email notification to us every time there's a new sales transaction being added. And everything is happening real time. So that means we are using direct query so that our changes can reflect immediately in the report. Now, a lot of stuff happening in this solution, and that is the thing when you go and look outside of Power BI. There's so many things that are possible, but that also makes it intimidating, especially at the beginning. But I hope with this video that anybody that was hesitating, well, is now pushed a little bit into the right direction and that you're going to give this a try because it's really worth it. All right, now let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, then check out these videos over here. I have also another design training coming up, the Power BI Design Transformation Program, where we build reports together and share all of my tips and tricks. If you want to take part in the next cohort, then check out these links over here. All right, now thank you for watching and see you in the next video.